Do you realize that we are here right now? This tells us that we are moments away from a potentially enormous push in the altcoin market, an altcoin season, the likes of which we have never seen before. There's so many metrics that are flashing right now across Bitcoin and the rest of the crypto market that show us where that money is flowing to and where we can be looking, because we need to act fast if we want to prepare ourselves correctly. And if you can stick around to the end of this video, I'll tell you which narratives and which key coins we should be looking towards if we want to capitalize. So hit that like button. Let's get into today's video. Now guys, first things first, you're like, what was that diagram that popped up at the start? Very good question. Well, it's this. It's the crypto market minus Bitcoin. This is very key because this represents the altcoin market. And this is brought to us by El Crypto Prof, who's been very successful in predicting the movements of Bitcoin and crypto over the last year. Here you can see the Wyckoff schematic at the top. And you're like, what is this Wyckoff schematic you took off? Well, in the 1920s, there was a guy called Richard Wyckoff who was working on Wall Street. He identified that the big institutions were playing this game where they would move between certain ranges, and after they'd finished accumulating all the tokens and things they wanted to, they would then move the price up. And you can see at the top, this is the diagram, and you can see at the bottom how perfectly all of this information fits into where we are right now. You can see the SOS phase. And this particular area here is the last point of no return before you see an astronomical pump in phase E, which according to this is pretty much now, maybe over the next kind of week or two max. And I get it, you're like, oh well, Ben Cowan told me that Bitcoin's going to go to 9 grand, so you don't know anything. True, of course, but the metrics are telling us a different story. So that's not enough information, so let's keep diving in further and see whether we can prove this in more detail. Total Bitcoin options open interest. Now, open interest in terms of options trading works a bit like this. Let's say I want to open an options trade on Bitcoin, like a call trade over the next 30 days, where I assume in the next 30 days that Bitcoin's going to be worth like 50k. Or on the flip side of things, if I'm bearish, I think it's going to be worth like 40k. And at the end of that expiration period, I'm forced to buy the trade or sell the trade, making me either a profit or a loss. Now I get it. You're like, okay, fine. What does this mean for us? What's the bigger picture? Well, as the Bitcoin price has been increasing recently, you can see the open interest, which is this green data down here, is starting to fall aggressively. That's very strange because as the price increased before, you would notice that the options or open interest options here were increasing, and then suddenly they slide away, disappearing. Why does that happen? Well, because the interest is moving to somewhere else. Moving to the altcoins. And here's something else that would tell us that the altcoin season is looming and that maybe we should be moving our money from the likes of Bitcoin into some of the altcoins now. And I'll talk about those altcoins later on if you're patient. Now, what we're looking at, Bitcoin 1 year inactive supply. Okay, so the yellow bit is the Bitcoin price and the purple bit is, you know, the people who've been inactive in Bitcoin for like the last year. What this means is if you buy Bitcoin, you're storing it away in a wallet, then you know you haven't touched it for a year, which I probably didn't need to explain because you probably already got that. Sorry for wasting that important 10 seconds of your time. But look at this. When we see the kind of like the purple line or the inactive supply dump, when does it happen? It tends to happen around the time that altcoin seasons start. Okay, we saw this one back at the end of 2013. Here you can see like the last major one. 2017, we saw a major dump in the inactive supply on Bitcoin. And then you can see as it climbs again, we get another major dump somewhere around 2021 as the Bitcoin bull market surges towards the upside. Now, what we would anticipate, and we can start to see it tailing off here, is if this suddenly takes a dump towards the downside, then that's going to be extremely bullish for the altcoins. Why? Because this metric tells us that people aren't taking money out of crypto, but they're taking money out of Bitcoin to put into other cryptos. Very, very key metric, okay? And we can see it's lining up quite nicely right now, and it's starting to take a little bit of a cool off, a little bit of a dip, and this would be great for the altcoins as well. And you're like, well, what about the halving? My old mate Gareth Soloway and Ben Cowan and all these others have been talking about the Bitcoin halving. Okay, let's think about this in terms of a supply and demand model. The theory out there is that bull markets always happen after the halving because bull markets are driven by the decrease in the supply coming from the rewards for miners. So every time a halving happens, the amount of supply arriving in the market starts to slow down. Although, because the number of blocks that's being produced at the moment is significantly lower than it ever was, we start to see that kind of difference that's going to happen every 4 years as being not very much at all. But the cycles, the bull market, bear market cycles, which happen between like 3.5 and 4 years, continue, whether it's going to be that halving thing or not. And why is that? Well, a couple of years ago, I watched Raoul Pal talking about this, saying that it wasn't actually the halving at all that drove it, but it was the liquidity cycle. And on my channel, I've been talking about this last year, and most of the times throughout the entire year, talking about global liquidity coming in. And why does global liquidity come in? Global liquidity, let's just think of as money, is like this. At the moment, you've just been through a period of quantitative, hopefully I said that right, tightening in the US, okay? Basically because the economy got put under huge strain at the end of COVID. They pumped up interest rates. They made life pretty hard for people living in that country, and the fact that people around the world, because this pumped up the prices of the dollar. Everyone else was then buying dollars and selling off their own currencies, which had its own effects. And this puts everyone under strain. But now in the US, there's an election year. The government wants to appear like they've been doing a really good job, so they start to pump money back into the economy. And this isn't just in the US. We've just seen in China, they've injected about $140 billion back into the economy. In the UK, they've been doing the same. And what does this look like to the average person? I'll give you an example. Well, I went for a haircut earlier this week, which is why I'm looking so damn sharp right now. And the barber who was cutting my hair told me that he was also interested in crypto and hadn't really been in crypto since back in like 2020, 2021. He said that around that period of time, the government started to give him grants to pay for his rent, for the property, etc. He got around £25,000, which is like $30,000, in order to pay for his rent for the year. And he was like, well, my rent was already paid, so I took that money and I put it into crypto. This is a liquidity cycle. It happens over a 4-year process. And this is what we can see happening right now. So ignore all this information that might be like, well, what if we get another COVID, or what if this happens? It's all following the liquidity cycle. The more the liquidity cycle is increasing, more crypto is pumping as well. And obviously my barber was a bit of a degen, good for him. But a lot of people did similar things. The same in the US, they were getting those stimulus checks and many people were just chucking that into crypto. And you can see these big blue kind of like pumps in the global central bank balance sheet, which is liquidity. And then it kind of goes into a big dip through the end of 2022 at the bottom of the bear market. Into 2023, we saw a nice recovery. And now we're just about to break through, okay, start 2024 into a positive cycle again. And you can see it just so happens that the halvings coincide with this time. Okay, I'm talking fast, let's come for a bit of air. So what we want to understand is this. Throughout the last year or so, who do you think has been investing in crypto? Mostly, it's people like you and it's people like me. People who maybe have been in crypto for a few years, people who are kind of a bit more experienced in, trading a bit of crypto, and some kind of institutions, but not, in a big way, institutions. Typically then, that means that most money from the institutions will be locked up in the likes of Bitcoin. But you and me, I don't know many people who I see in many of my groups, like the free group, which is linked down below, talking much about Bitcoin. They're all focused on kind of the smaller degen plays. These smaller degen plays are basically propped up right now by a lot of retail money. At least the sort of smarter retail money. Because the dumber retail money tends to enter at the end of the bull market. Although from time to time I still do read some pretty dumb comments down below. But don't let that put you off. So if we know right now that a lot of crypto projects have been pumped mainly by retail interest, then it will be interesting to see where that kind of bigger money is going to flow into that's not in Bitcoin. And where can we look? Well, let's have a look at this. This is from CoinShares. We can see in the last week, we've seen it flows into Bitcoin, valuing at $702 million. We can see that various other assets, such as Ethereum, down 6.4 million. Shorting Bitcoin, so obviously a negative against Bitcoin, is down 5.3 million. So it is looking like there's a lot of money flooding into Bitcoin from large money, which is obviously driving up the price right now. And then you can see others in this list, which are very key. Notably, Solana sat here with $13.4 million in inflows from large-scale investments. Okay, 13 million is not massive, but it's notable that the big investment funds are looking to drive money into the likes of Solana and taking away from Ethereum. There's others down the list. You've got XRP taking like 100 grand, which is nothing much. Litecoin showing some interest, and Cardano. And there's obviously going to be some more if you go down the list. I'm also aware that there's outflows happening on Avalanche, which is quite strange to see as well, showing that certain ecosystems getting favored right now. And that's why Solana continues to perform strongly, although Ethereum now is also showing good signs of catching up. So let's realize this. In the next phase that follows in this bull market, which will be a significant leg up probably for Bitcoin and the bigger altcoins, what we will tend to see is bigger institution funds coming flooding into those bigger platforms, and then the degens like yourself and me will be taking our profits from those bigger coins and moving them to other altcoins, usually on those similar chains. So we know that likely we're going to see big pushes continue on Solana, not necessarily Solana itself, but coins within that ecosystem are worth paying attention to. We'll also likely see a bigger increase on Ethereum, which has been underperforming still for a very long time, although it's nearly reaching 2.5 grand. I can see it pushing quite aggressively soon if Bitcoin continues to rally. The key narratives that are clearly starting to show a lot of interest right now and have been over the last year or so, we can see our AI, real-world assets. We've seen Chainlink pumping aggressively more recently. Modular chains are really picking up with Celestia, and that whole space getting very exciting. Coming down the list, you've got Compute, you've got Akash Render having a good time more recently. Deepin, and a few others just sort of sat quietly down here. I do anticipate that Deepin's going to be starting to move more aggressively soon in order to try and support that AI piece. GameFi, Gamify, other very popular narratives are still sort of struggling to gain much momentum, although I do think later on in the bull market they're going to see a lot of growth. If Ethereum continues to push, then start to look towards layer 2s. Personally, I hold a good chunk of Metis and I hold a good chunk of Mantle, although they are very large market caps, so I'm not anticipating seeing millions and millions of dollars in return. I just see that this early stage of the bull market could be an exciting one for us. But there's something I really want to share with you. At the top, we got Bitcoin, and at the bottom, we got Solana. And why I'm showing you these two is very important. Right now, in my opinion, we're somewhere around this zone, which is where we were about September 2020, before we saw the first really significant leg up in Bitcoin. I want you to pay attention to Solana, just because Solana was a top performer in the last bull market. Around this time, last bull market, Solana, no one knew about. It was worth around $3, and during this first period of time, all the bigger market cap coins were getting moving. The Ethereums, the Matics, etc. Solana barely even woke up until Bitcoin was already at an all-time high, and then it sort of still cooled off until around the 19th of July 2021, by which point Bitcoin had already been in a bull market for over a year. Right now, I keep telling you about Chainlinks and the layer 2s and trying to get ourselves like a 4x or a 5x. Why? Because I'm trying to make a 4 or 5x during this first window. And most of you, if you were subscribed to my channel, you would have been buying Solana around $8. If you were subscribed through the summer, you would have been buying ICP at just under $3. You would have been picking up on Optimism. You'd have been making money in the Avalanche ecosystem. You'd have been making huge gains on Render and so many others. So make sure if you haven't already that you're subscribed to the channel. So if you're subscribed, then you're already at a good point right now. You've been making some good gains. Now what we're really looking for over the next 6 or so months is to be able to make ourselves maybe a 4, maybe a 5x in some larger cap coins. And you're like, that's so boring. But listen, if you got $1,000 and you want to turn it into 100 grand, 100x is bloody hard, okay? To find a coin that's going to 100x, super hard. But to turn that grand into 5, maybe even 10 grand in the next 6 months by playing in some of the bigger altcoins, then you actually got a reasonably good opportunity. And then once you've got your 10 grand, remember you can make your 10 grand, and then you wait and you find your coin like Solana, and with that 10 grand, you got like an 8x or something like that, and that brings you up to pretty much 90, nearly even 100 grand. Whereas most people are kind of messing around down here with small market caps they don't really know too much about. If you can draw out this bull market in front of you and realize that there is a long period of time ahead and you don't need to be impatient, then you're going to do far better. Guys, obviously nothing I've said is financial advice. Okay guys, if you're trading crypto right now, make sure you're using MEXC, link down below, because it's 0% spot maker taker fees. It is free to trade on MEXC right now. Absolutely crazy, not heard of anywhere else. Has over 4,000 different altcoins, which is more than any other exchange. MEXC is the top exchange available in my opinion. And many of you are like, well, I can't use it because I'm in the US or I need to do KYC or whatever. Guys, you only need to do KYC if you are depositing funds on MEXC. But if you're transferring funds in from somewhere else to MEXC in order to change them to then go and deposit somewhere else, like into a hard wallet, then just use a NordVPN. Link down below again. This is an exclusive deal with my channel. You'll get 4 months extra free by using that link down below. 30-day money-back guarantee. If you click get the deal, you can then see it's £2.39, which is like $2.50, $2.60 per month, which is like a price of a cup of coffee. And here's how it works. Look, this is me trying to use OrcaSwap, which isn't allowed in the UK. I literally go to my NordVPN. I then just change my country quickly to Austria, which you can see I'm now in Austria. I can refresh this page, and then lo and behold, I now have access to OrcaSwap. You can do this with MEXC, you can use it with other exchanges. Not only is this an easy way to access other platforms that aren't allowed in our own countries, but also it provides an extra layer of security, because now having a double encrypted connection to the internet means no one can spy on what I'm doing, and that makes it an essential tool in crypto trading, in my opinion, as it keeps you safe online and also reduces any fees and things you're paying like that. Guys, I hope you enjoyed that video today. If you did, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you on Monday with a deep in blockbuster video. See you later. Bye-bye.